You ever get that feeling? That itch at the back of your neck, like someone's watching you. But when you turn around, there's nothing, just empty air and shadows? I've been feeling that a lot lately. Too much, if I'm honest. It started when I moved into this quiet little house on Elmwood Drive, a sleepy street in a sleepy town where nothing ever happens. At least, that's what I thought. That's what I hoped. But hopes have a way of crumbling when you least expect it, don't they? My name's Sarah. I'm 32, single, and I work from home designing websites. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. I moved here 3 months ago, looking for a fresh start after a messy breakup. The house was cheap, the neighborhood was peaceful, and the realtor swore it was a steal. Perfect for a young professional like you, she'd said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I should have noticed that. I should have noticed a lot of things. The first time I saw him was the day I moved in. I was hauling boxes from a U-Haul, sweat dripping down my back despite the cool October breeze, when I caught a glimpse of someone standing across the street. He was tall, thin, like a scarecrow someone forgot to stuff properly, and he was just standing there, right in front of the house directly opposite mine, a sagging old place with peeling paint and windows so dirty they looked like they hadn't been cleaned in decades. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't do anything but stare. I couldn't see his face clearly. The brim of his faded baseball cap cast a shadow over it, but I felt his eyes on me, heavy and unblinking, like a weight pressing down on my chest. I raised a hand, gave a little wave, neighborly thing to do. He didn't wave back. He just turned and shuffled into the house, the screen door slamming shut behind him with a sound that echoed down the empty street. I told myself it was nothing. People can be weird, right? Especially in small towns. Maybe he was shy. Maybe he didn't like newcomers. I brushed it off and went back to unpacking. But that night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet. No city traffic, no sirens, just the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards settling. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it. A faint tapping. Tap, 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 like fingernails on glass. I sat up, heart thudding, and listened harder. It was coming from the living room. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and crept down the hall, telling myself it was just a branch against the window or a squirrel on the roof. But when I got there, the room was empty. The windows were shut tight, the curtains still. I checked every corner, every shadow, nothing. The tapping stopped as soon as I stepped into the room, like it had been waiting for me to notice. I laughed it off, shaky and unconvincing even to myself, and went back to bed. But as I drifted off, I couldn't shake the image of that man across the street, standing there, staring. I wondered if he'd seen me through the window. I wondered if he'd been the one tapping. The next morning, I met Mrs. Hargrove, the sweet old lady who lived next door. She was watering her roses when I stepped outside to grab the mail, and she waved me over with a smile. "Settling in okay, dear?" she asked, her voice crackly but warm. "Yeah, mostly," I said, glancing across the street. His house looked even worse in the daylight. Crooked shutters, a lawn choked with weeds, a rusty mailbox tilting like it was about to fall over. "Hey, who lives over there?" Her smile faltered, just for a second, before she turned back to her roses. "Oh, that's Mr. Carver. Keeps to himself, mostly. Been there longer than anyone can remember." "Does he ever talk to people?" I asked, try to sound casual. "Not much," she said, snipping a dead bloom with her shears. "He's harmless, though. Don't you worry about him." But the way she said it, quick and clipped, made me think she didn't believe it herself. That night, the tapping came back. Louder this time, more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. I bolted upright, fumbling for my phone, my pulse racing so fast I could feel it in my throat. It was coming from the kitchen now. I grabbed a baseball bat from the closet, leftover from my ex's stuff I hadn't thrown out yet, and tiptoed down the stairs. The house was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside, filtering through the blinds in thin, pale slivers. I flipped on the kitchen light, bat raised, ready to swing at whatever was there. Nothing. The room was empty. No branches, no squirrels, no explanation. But the air felt wrong, thick, like it was pressing against my skin. And then I saw it. The window above the sink was cracked open just an inch. I know I'd locked it. I know I had. My hand shook as I slammed it shut and twisted the lock, double-checking it, triple-checking it. I told myself it was the wind, or maybe I'd forgotten. But deep down, I didn't believe it. The next day, I started watching him. I couldn't help it. Every time I glanced out my front window, there he was, standing on his porch, or in his yard, or just inside his doorway, always facing my house. He never did anything, just stood there, still as a statue, that cap pulled low over his face. I'd catch him out of the corner of my eye while I worked, and my stomach would twist into knots. I started closing the blinds, but it didn't help. I could still feel him out there, watching. I asked around town casually, not trying to sound paranoid. The cashier at the grocery store shrugged and said, "Carver? Yeah, he's weird, but he's always been that way." The guy at the hardware store just grunted and changed the subject. Nobody seemed to know much about him, or if they did, they didn't want to say. It was like he was a ghost they'd all agreed to ignore. A week later, things got worse. I was in the backyard, raking leaves, when I heard a noise, a low, raspy sound, like someone breathing too close to my ear. I spun around, rake clutched like a weapon, but the yard was empty. Just the fence, the shed, and the line of trees at the edge of the property. The sound came again, louder, and I realized it was coming from his side of the street. I peeked over the fence, heart pounding, and there he was, standing at his back window, staring right at me. His face was still shadowed, but I could see his mouth moving, like he was whispering something I couldn't hear. I dropped the rake and ran inside, locking the door behind me. That night, the tapping turned into scratching. Long, slow scrapes against the glass, like nails dragging down a chalkboard. It moved from window to window, circling the house, kitchen, living room, bedroom. I huddled under blankets, phone in hand, too scared to call 911, because what would I even say? My neighbor's creeping me out. The scratching stopped at my bedroom window, and then I heard it, a voice. Low, guttural, barely human. "Sarah," it hissed, stretching my name into something twisted and wrong. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The next morning, I found marks on the outside of the window, deep, jagged scratches that hadn't been there before. I called a locksmith, had every door and window reinforced, even installed a cheap security camera I ordered online. I told myself I was overreacting, that it was just my imagination running wild. But when I checked the camera footage that night, I saw him, Mr. Carver, standing in my front yard at 3 a.m., motionless, staring up at my bedroom window. The footage cut out after 10 seconds, static, then black. When it came back, he was gone. I went to the police the next day. The officer, a tired-looking guy named Reynolds, listened with a bored expression as I stammered through my story. "Look, ma'am," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Carver's odd, sure, but he's never hurt anyone. Probably just curious about the new neighbor. I'll have a word with him, but I wouldn't worry too much." He didn't get it. Nobody did. That night, the scratching came back, louder, angrier. The camera caught him again, closer this time, right up against the front door, his shadowed face pressed to the glass. His mouth was moving, but there was no sound, just that awful, silent whisper. I watched the footage over and over, trying to read his lips, but all I could make out was my name, over and over. "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah." I stopped leaving the house. I worked with the blinds shut, the lights dim, jumping at every creak and groan. I ordered groceries online, had them left on the porch, too scared to step outside, but he was always there. I'd peek through the blinds and see him, standing, staring, waiting. Sometimes he'd be gone for hours, and I'd think it was over, but then he'd reappear, closer than before, like he knew I was watching. Last night was the worst. I woke up to silence, no tapping, no scratching, just an eerie stillness that made my skin crawl. I checked the camera feed on my phone, expecting to see him outside, but the yard was empty. Relief washed over me, until I heard it, a creak from the hallway. Slow, deliberate footsteps, coming closer. I grabbed the bat, my breath hitching, and crept to the door. The house was dark, the air heavy and cold. I peeked out, and there he was, standing at the end of the hall, his cap tilted back, just enough for me to see his face. It wasn't a face. Not really. His skin was gray and stretched tight, like leather left out in the sun too long. His eyes were black pits, sunken and endless, and his mouth, God, his mouth, was a gaping, toothless maw that stretched too wide, twitching like it was trying to smile. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, staring. "Sarah," he rasped, his voice echoing inside my skull. I screamed, swung the bat, but it passed right through him, like he was made of smoke. He didn't flinch, didn't react, just kept staring, his head tilting slowly to one side. I ran, locked myself in the bathroom, and called 911, sobbing into the phone. The cops came, searched the house, found nothing. No sign of a break-in, no footprints, no Carver. "Maybe it was a nightmare," Officer Reynolds said, his tone dripping with skepticism. "Stress can do funny things. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. He's still out there, across the street, watching. I can feel him right now, even as I sit here, typing this on my laptop with shaking hands. The blinds are shut, the doors are locked, but it doesn't matter. He's not just a neighbor. He's something else, something old, something wrong, and he's not going to stop. I don't know what he wants. I don't know why he's here, but every night, the scratching gets louder, the whispers get closer, and I'm running out of places to hide. If you're reading this, if you ever move to Elmwood Drive, don't look across the street. Don't wave. Just run.